Hi everyone, this is Jen from Jen Spends, and I'm going to show you how I am creating a faux leaded glass window in my dining room. I'm using gallery glass products here. They've got this great instant lead line product that's it's almost like thick rubber bands with a sticky back. You can see that it's flexible. It's kind of a dark gray. And so I'm using that to create the lead lines. First what I did was created this sketch based on a couple different things. We have two existing leaded glass windows in our house, and so I used those as kind of the inspiration. You can see down below here's some of the measurements from one of our windows that I was using as a guideline. And then later I found an example of a real leaded glass window from a craftsman house that I liked, that had a little bit more detail to it, but it was similar to our existing style. So this just kind of makes it a little bit more elaborate. This is going to be in our dining room, so I thought it would be nice to have a little bit more detail in there. Our overall dimensions for the window are 15 3/4 inches tall by 37 3/4 wide. And so I figured out that I could divide it pretty easily into 5 different sections. You can use this to create frosted glass or a rippled glass effect, so it'll give us a little more privacy instead of having to look out at our neighbor's house. One more thing I've got here, they've also got this simulated liquid leading, which you can either use to create the lines, but I knew that that would be really messy, especially working on a vertical surface, since I can't take the window out. But what it can also be used for is faux solder for the joints, so you don't have to get right up close and perfect with the joints of this flexible leading. You just fill it in with this liquid leading. I haven't used it yet, so we'll see how it works
Okay,
later.
so this is going to be a little bit tricky to see since I'm working at night. That's about the only time I have time to do things like this. And my neighbors will probably think I'm a creeper if they see me here, but anyway, you can see that I've already begun working out the outline of this design. And I've started with just measuring the different points I needed. The 5 different sections are about 7.5 inches wide. So I measured out my 7.5 inch section and then just stuck them down end to end. And again, it is self-adhesive, so all you do is peel off the backing and then stick it down. I did have to clean the window first with some glass cleaner just to make sure that the leading would stick well. One thing I discovered with this is that even though you measure it and cut it, and by the way, I'm cutting it with just a little utility knife here, even though you've measured it carefully, when you go to peel it off, it'll stretch out a little bit. So once you get it stuck up there, if the measurements really matter to you, like they will in my case, you will want to measure again once you've stuck it on, and then just trim off any excess. So just be aware of that. In my case, I'm using the points, the end points, to dictate how I put together my design. So it's really crucial to have those measurements accurate. Okay, just to show you an example of how I am applying this and keeping it nice and straight and everything, it's going to be difficult because I'm trying to film and show you at the same time, but basically I already had the short piece at the top and a short piece on the bottom already in place. So those gave me my points, and now I'm just filling in the longer section. So what I'm doing is using a straight edge to line up the edges here. And that gives me a guide to make it nice and straight. And then you just use your finger, and again I'm doing this one-handed, which I wouldn't be if I was actually doing it, but you use your finger to just press down the leading into place. If you happen to make a mistake, it does lift back up pretty easily, and you can reposition it and it will stick. So they say you can do that a few times. You don't want to do it excessively or else it will stop sticking, but I've done it 2 or 3 times on some pieces and it works out really well. So that's how I've been working, and I'm just going to continue cutting out pieces that, you know, from endpoint to endpoint, and using the other points as a guide and just kind of filling in the design little by little. If you think of it in terms of points rather than the overall picture, it is really easy to do. It just takes a little bit of time. So I've got the longer piece in place now, nice and straight. But there's a little bit of an excess. I decided, since I already knew the endpoints, not to measure this, just to eliminate an extra step. If you do have a little excess, you just use your knife and gently kind of rock back and forth until you cut through, and then it pulls right away. It's really easy. I spent about 2.5 hours last night doing all of the leading on the windows. It came out great. It wasn't that difficult, just a little bit time consuming. This morning I filled in with liquid leading all the gaps. I don't know if you can really see that. The liquid leading is just kind of like almost like fabric puffy paint, and I just filled in any gaps. And now I've begun to paint in some of the detail with the clear frosted gallery glass paint. I decided to use that for some of the, I guess I would call this either a tree or a flower design, kind of abstract, but I decided to use frosted to bring out that detail. And what I'm doing is just painting it on with a paintbrush, and then lightly going over it vertically. I wanted it to look smooth. If you look really close, you can see brush marks, but from a distance it doesn't really show. The whiter bits that you see, that's still very wet, but you can see it dries to a nice frosted look that really does obscure, at least from a distance, some of the detail behind there, so I can't see the roof anymore. So I'm really loving how this is coming out. So I'm just taking a fairly generous amount of paint on the paintbrush, wiping it on along the diagonal here because it's a little bit easier to fit the brush inside that way. So I'm just covering up the whole space, and then I go back through and do vertical strokes. And once it's dry, again, unless you're really up close examining it, you're not going to see the brush marks, so I don't really worry too much about being perfect here. I'm really liking how this is coming out. Okay, now I've begun filling in the rippled areas with gallery glass in crystal clear. You can see some of the sections I did earlier, they've begun to dry pretty well. There's still a few whiter areas where it's not dry yet, but you can see what a wonderful effect it's creating there. Now there are different ways to apply this in order to get different textures. What I've been doing is just applying a little bit. I discovered because of gravity and this stuff is really kind of thin, I'm not applying it to the bottom initially because it'll flow down there anyway, so I just kind of stick to the top and sides initially. I'm just spreading a little bit on here, not getting full coverage just yet, just kind of spreading it out evenly. And then what I've been doing, again, there are different ways to get different textures. I'm just using my fingertip to kind of spread it around. I'm just tapping. And this is ensuring that it covers the whole area, spreads it out, and it gives it kind of a pebbled effect rather than swirls. I thought this would look a little bit more realistic than if I used the tip to swirl it, as a lot of the examples showed. Excuse my little boy who is not taking his nap like he was supposed to. So there you can see I've got another area finished, and soon it'll dry and it will be clear. And if you happen to go over the edges, I don't know if you can really make it out in this video, but it's gone over the edges a bit, so I just use a Q-tip to take that off of the leading strip. It actually wouldn't really be a big deal if I let it dry. It would just make it look shiny, and I want more of an authentic matte finish, so that's why I take that extra step, but it's really not strictly necessary. Here we are a few weeks later, and the paint has completely dried and cured, and I'm just very, very happy with the end result here. As you can see, it obscures the roof behind the window pretty well. You can still make out the colors, of course, but you don't see the shapes very clearly or anything, so it's a vast improvement in this room. It really adds the historical character I was looking for and gives us a little bit more privacy. I'll try to zoom in here, show you some of the texture. It's kind of difficult to make out because the sun's shining very brightly, but you can see it's got kind of a nice pebbled texture there, and then there's the areas that are just flat frosted glass. It does look very authentic, I think. I'm very happy with it. I'm very picky about adding things like this to my house because it is an old historical house, and I like to do things tastefully and respect the historical character. And for what this was, just, you know, paint and essentially stickers, I just think it looks fantastic. And it was fairly easy to do too, so I hope I've helped you out by showing you some of the process and maybe given you some ideas for your own homes. Thanks for watching.